Alright, welcome to our very first lesson video for geometry. We're going to take a look today at congruence definition and notation. We're going to talk about how to say things are congruent. So there's going to be a lot of information and ways that we show and label things as congruent. So first we're going to kind of go over some basic definitions of what congruent means. Basically, if two things have equal measure, then they're congruent. So in this case, when we talk about congruent segments, okay, this is our main idea, and this is that, sorry about that, ignore the little mark. If this length, segment AB, and I placed it on a number line so you could actually look and measure that and figure out that it's 1, 2, 3, 4 units long. Well, CD is somewhere else on a number line, but it's also 1, 2, 3, 4 units long. Since they're both equal to the same number, they are equal in length. And so when I refer to the length of a segment, I just write the two letters of the endpoints like that, and I say that it is equal to this other one. So the length of AB is equal to the length of CD. And if that's the case, then the segments are congruent, and we would write that a little bit differently. When I just write AB, I'm not calling it a segment. I'm referring to the numeric length of it. So to refer back to the segment, I need to make sure I label AB as a segment. I put the line above it. And then CD is also a segment. But to say that they are congruent, the congruent symbol is this. An equal sign with this tilde above it. Okay, I'll make it a little bit bigger for you so you can see it. This is a congruent symbol. Equals with what we call a tilde above it, that curved line. So let's go ahead and take a look at when we talk about angles being congruent. Before we can talk about congruent angles, we need to talk about how to measure angles. Okay? An angle is formed by two rays, it could be segments or lines also, but two rays with a common endpoint. So we'd have ray BA and ray BC. And ray BC, there we go, that make up this angle. All right? And they're telling you it's measured in 60 degrees. The common endpoint is called the vertex, and the rays are called sides. And that's what an angle is. Okay? And so we name an angle using 3 letters. Okay? The middle letter must be the vertex. The middle letter has to be the vertex. So this we would call angle, and we use an angle symbol. Okay, just a little angle symbol, A, B, C. That letter B has to be the middle letter. Now, we can use a single letter if there's only one angle located at that vertex. So we could also call this angle B. Because right now in this, sorry, I'm marking all over my page. Right now in this diagram, there's only one angle with that vertex B. Okay? When referring to the measure of an angle, we use a lowercase m in front of the angle symbol. So if I'm just referring to the angle itself, I call it an angle ABC. But if I wanted to explain that the measure of that angle is 60 degrees, I write m angle ABC equals 60. Okay? We have 3 types of angles we want to talk about before we go on any further. If the measure is less than 90, okay, the measure is less than 90 degrees, that is an acute angle. If the measure is greater than 90 degrees, if it's bigger than a right angle, we call that an obtuse angle. And if it's exactly 90, we call it a right angle, which we talked about in the last lesson. But also, if it is exactly equal to 180 degrees, we call that a straight angle. All right? So that's a little bit of information regarding classifying angles. And so in our first example, we are going to work with this angle. We're going to name it, we're going to tell the parts of it, and we're going to classify it as one of these 3. So name the vertex of this angle. Well, the common endpoint for the rays is letter K, so K is the vertex. The sides of the angle would be rays KJ and KL, so I'm going to write those as rays. Okay. And there are three different ways we can name this angle. And I'll show you what those three are. One way is by calling it angle JKL. So we would write angle JKL. But I could reverse those and call it angle LKJ, and it's still the same angle. But since there's only one angle with this vertex K right now, then I can just call it angle K. Now, as you look at this, you should be able to tell that this looks bigger than a right angle. Since it's bigger than 90 degrees, this would be an obtuse angle. All right, pause the video at any time if you need to get caught up, or if I'm going too fast, you can go back and replay any of it to catch anything that you're missing. But make sure you are staying caught up and have these things written down. All right, so let's talk about congruent angles now. We started off with congruent segments. So we're going to talk about congruent angles. Okay, so if angle A equals angle B in measure, we would write it like this. The measure of angle A equals the measure of angle B, then the angles are congruent. And this would be written as angle A is congruent to angle B. And we can mark that either by putting 75 degrees in both, or we can mark with these arc measures, okay, like that. So I want you to go ahead and mark that at angle A and angle B to show that they are marked as congruent angles. All right, so I've shown you how to mark that angles are congruent. I do want you to look back up here. In any diagram where you're saying that segments are congruent, there's a way we can mark those congruent also, and that's using a tick mark. Okay, so somewhere along this segment AB, I'm going to put a tick mark, and I'm going to match it to this tick mark, and it's just a way of visually representing that they are the same length. Okay, so in our diagram in example 3 now, we are going to take a look at this picture, and we're going to answer these questions. So first, I want us to write another name for angle CBF. CBF. I can't just call it angle B, because there would be 1, 2, 3, 4 separate angles that I can see right away that would use that same vertex. But I can change the order of the letters. So the other name for this angle would be angle FBC. Now it says name the sides of angle EBD. Well, sides are rays, so BE and BD are the rays. Sorry. BE and BD are the rays because B is the vertex, the common endpoint. Part C, I want you to classify ABC. ABC, notice that that is a straight line, and so we call it a straight angle. And then give an example of an obtuse angle. Well, we have several we could choose from. What I want you to recognize is that it's going to take combining some of these other parts to get that obtuse angle. So I'm going to actually highlight the one I choose. Okay, I want any angle that is bigger than 90 degrees. Well, I have a 90-degree angle here at angle B with DBC or DBA. So as long as I go beyond that, that would be an obtuse angle. There's many possible correct answers, but I'm going to use angle EBD as my answer. And then 2 congruent angles. Well, there are 2 angles with these markings here and here. Those have to be the congruent angles. So we're going to say that angle EBA is congruent to angle FBC. Okay, and so we're going to go ahead and take a look at the next side of your notes. Okay, and I'm actually going to have you pause the video here, and I'm going to have you try this one on your own. I will give you the answers after you're done, but I do want you to try and do this one on your own as best you can, and then you can click play to see what the answers should be. All right, if you need any more time, make sure you pause the video or keep it paused. Otherwise, these are the answers you should get. All right. The vertex of angle 2 is T. And notice that we've numbered the angles. That's another way you can label angles in a diagram, is by numbering them. And so the trick is, if they give you the numbers in a diagram, you can use them. But if they don't, you can't just assign numbers yourself. Okay? If the numbers are given, you can use them. If they're not, then you need to not try and assign numbers yourself. These are not measures of the angles. They're just a way of labeling the angles so we know what we're talking about. Part B, it asks for the sides of angle 4. That would be TW and TZ. If you wrote those in a different order, that's okay, but T has to be the first letter for both. Another name for angle 3 would be UTZ or ZTU. Another name for angle 1 would be XTY or YTX. Okay, angle YTW is a right angle. Angle YTU is obtuse. Angle XTU is acute. And angle WTX is a straight angle. All right, and then just to review what we talked about in the last lesson, we want to name two perpendicular lines. Well, this right angle here means that these lines are perpendicular. So line WX is perpendicular to line YZ. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this part. And what we're going to do now, we're going to talk about marking, and I'm actually going to, again, have you pause the video and try to look at this on your own, but we're also going to talk about this part in class. And so I'm not actually going to give answers on this part. If you want to try and go ahead and answer these on your own, you can. Otherwise, we will discuss this part in class. Okay? And don't worry about this bottom sentence. We'll talk about that in class also. But that concludes our first video.